record this on my computer. And then later on, I'll be able to share a playback link with all of you. So good afternoon. My name is Brenda Meller. My company is Meller Marketing, and I help people unlock the power of LinkedIn. I'm very excited to be bringing you an awesome Power 30-minute webinar here today. And we're going to be talking about LinkedIn for speakers. So whether you're currently doing speaking engagements, maybe virtual for now, and maybe you've done live in-person speaking engagements in the past, or maybe you're aspiring to become a professional speaker, create a little bit of a side hustle opportunity for yourself. I want to share with you some techniques that are going to help you to kind of elevate your status on LinkedIn and elevate the visibility you have for yourself. So what I'd like to do right now is, if we could take a moment and let's introduce yourself in chat. And I want you to think about doing this technique at every virtual session you do from now on, every webinar, every networking event, anything you go into where you have the chance to introduce yourself, introduce yourself. And especially if you're trying to expand your speaking business, tell people what you speak about. What is the topic that you speak about? And what I like to do is I actually like to put my LinkedIn URL in the chat as well. So I want to show you this technique. If I go to my profile and I pull just the www version of my web address, and if I were to drop that into the chat, let me just show you how to do this. So if I drop it into chat, I'm trying to pull up my chat navigation here, or my GoToMeeting navigation. If I drop it into chat without the HTTP, often it will not show it as a hyperlink. So right now I'm just seeing it as like a flat black web address. Now, if I grab it with the whole address bar with HTTPS and drop it in there, now it is blue and it is hyperlinked. So what I'd like you guys to do is the very same technique. So take a moment, introduce yourself in the chat, and then put your LinkedIn URL at the back end of it. And I'd love to hear a little bit about where you're at in your speaking journey. Are you currently speaking? Are you doing virtual speaking engagements? Have you done in-person speaking engagements in the past? Or is it something you're looking at doing in the future? Are you an aspiring speaker, right? Maybe a future speaker. And then what do you talk about? What are the topics that you share with audiences? Tell us a little bit about that as well. So I'm an experienced speaker. My topic is how to optimize your time and results on LinkedIn. And then I put my LinkedIn URL. And I'm curious to see who else is with us here today. And what is it you guys are speaking about? So John, is it Jean or John? I'm not sure, but I see your LinkedIn URL. I'm not seeing your topic yet. Chris Levinson as well. Let us know, what do you speak about? So drop that into the introduction as well. And this is a great way of expanding your network with fellow speakers. And what I find, guys, is that when you're not able to unmute yourself. Everyone will be muted because we're in a 30-minute session here today. So use the chat if you wouldn't mind. But what I find is that when you connect with speakers, we all tend to travel in packs. And if I connect with Christopher Levinson, for example, and I know that Christopher is speaking at a conference, and he might have the conference presenter reach out to him and say, hey, we're looking for somebody to speak in a marketing track. Who do you know? Christopher might go, Brenda Meller, she talks about LinkedIn, and he might name drop me, right? So by connecting with fellow speakers, we're building out more people in our network that can provide referral opportunities to us. So I would highly encourage you guys to connect with one another and use these LinkedIn URLs as an opportunity to expand your network right away, right while you're in the session here today. All right. So while we're waiting for those introductions to come in, I'm going to proceed, and then we'll come back and learn a little bit more about each of you as we're going throughout here. So what you're going to learn here today, this is 30 minutes. It's going to be quick. We'll have about 5 minutes for Q&A at the end. So I'm just going to focus on 3 areas, mainly on your LinkedIn profile. So how and why an optimized LinkedIn profile can lead to more paid speaking gigs. I'm going to give you a couple of high-level tips on things you can do right now in your profile, okay? And then we're going to talk about some common mistakes that you might be making that could be costing you speaking business, and how to correct and overcome those. We're going to go through a few simple techniques on how to amplify your reach on LinkedIn. And then again, at the end, we'll have time for Q&A. If you have any questions, submit those through chat. You can do that now. You don't have to wait till the end. And we'll take about 5 minutes at the end for Q&A. Everyone will be muted, and a reminder too, this session is being recorded, and yes, I will send you a link that you can download the slides as well. So feel free to take notes, but do know that you will be given access to download a copy of these slides as well. So right away, I want to think about, is your LinkedIn profile optimized? And when I think about profile optimization, I think about like artists and sculptures, okay? Like they're kind of their finished work of art. And I'm even thinking about that, the sculpture of the little girl in the financial district in New York City, right? She's got her hands on her hips and then the bull's kind of coming at her. And I think about when the artist originally got that slab of material, whatever it was, steel or metal or whatever, it really wasn't anything. And it was the artist going through and taking things out, like carving things out and then keeping things in that created that finished work of art. So I want you to think about right now, who is your ideal target audience as a speaker? It might be people who are looking to book you. It might be corporations or organizations. It might be people who can refer business to you. That is who you're writing your profile for. Your profile should not look like a resume if you're not looking to work full-time in a job. Your profile should look more like a professional speaker, okay? And think about every area in your profile, writing that for your ideal target audience. If it doesn't make sense to that ideal target audience, I would consider taking it out or reducing some of that detail, okay? Fill out every area. LinkedIn gives you a lot of areas you can fill out on your profile. I would encourage you to fill out every one of those and think about using all the character limits that they give you. I'll show you some techniques on that today. And I also want you to think about writing your profile for a person. We want it to be interesting for a human being to read. And even I want you to look at your profile after we're done with the session here today. Read it from top to bottom. Is it interesting to you? If it's not interesting to you, it's not interesting to me, okay? I want it to be interesting for human beings to want to read it. I also want you to think about writing your profile for a computer. What I mean by that is we want to use the right keywords and phrases in the right places on your profile to help you to both come up in more searches and then keep people on your profile longer. Okay, so when I say write for a computer, you want to think about the algorithm kind of pulling keywords from your profile and how does that help you to be in the top of the search results when people are searching on LinkedIn for those keywords. Okay, so that's a little bit of an overview and an introduction there. This is my checklist and we've only got 30 minutes, so I'm not going to be able to spend a lot of time, but I do want to give you some highlights on things I would advise that you use as a professional speaker. First, let's talk about your photos. You've got your headshot photo at the top, and then you've got that header image, that rectangular image in on your profile. Your headshot photo should be you at your professional best, okay? Professional, smiling, current is really important. It should look like you today, not you from 10 years ago, okay? And then really important here, your face from the top of your forehead to the bottom of your chin, that should be about 50 to 60% of the circle. And I want you to think about when you see a profile photo and the person's face is really far back, they look less important, less impressive. When it's a little bit more zoomed in, we look more important. We look more approachable, right? More exciting. So think about zooming that in a little bit. Your background image should be intentional to support your speaking business. So make sure maybe it shows pictures of you up on stage or mentions some of the topics that you speak about, but think about really using that space as an advertising or marketing for your speaking business. Now, your headline, what I would recommend, it's not just job title at company, but maybe you say virtual speaker on LinkedIn strategy, for example, or virtual speaker on diversity and inclusion. Let us know what it is that you are speaking about. That headline field is one of the fields that's really going to help you to come up in search results. So for me, just putting Chief Engagement Officer at Meller Marketing, that's not going to land me any speaking gigs. Virtual speaker about LinkedIn strategy could lead me to more business. Okay, your contact info. Now let's think about your ideal target audience landing on your profile. They want to book you. You want to make sure that there's some calls to action in that contact info. Make sure that it is complete. That means you've used your websites, you put your phone number in there, you know, all the information, all the fields that give you, use that to your advantage. Okay. Accurate. Make sure that the web links work. Make sure if you have your Twitter listed that you're actually using that Twitter account. If not, you should disable it. And then your 3 websites that you can put in your contact info section, those don't have to be just home pages of your website. That could be a home page. It could be a secondary page, which is like a demo video, your speaker sizzle reel, right? That could be pointing to that. Or maybe an event page, upcoming speaking engagements, for example. So think about using all 3 spaces for 3 websites in that contact info. Moving into your about statement, this is really important, guys. Focus on the first 3 lines. That is what's in the previewable area before somebody has to click on see more, okay? Most people will not click on see more, okay? For that reason, you should really be focusing on those first 3 lines. Make sure it's interesting, compelling, and it makes somebody want to click and read through it. If it's not interesting to you, it's not interesting to me, okay? Also, I would encourage you to write it in the first person. Your LinkedIn profile is you speaking to the world about your speaking practice. It's not Brenda Meller is an experienced speaker, blah, blah, blah. That sounds kind of cold, third person approach. Instead, I'm an experienced speaker and I love helping educate my audience about LinkedIn strategy, for example. Okay. So think about making it in first person, focusing on those first 3 lines, and then telling us a little bit of your backstory, how you got to where you are today as a speaker. Your featured section. Now, this is a newer section on LinkedIn. Make sure that this has been activated on your profile. If not, you have to click on add a profile section and then you can enable this featured section. But this is kind of like highlights, right? And you can either add just one item, you can add multiple items. I would recommend that you add 2 or 3 items, including some photos or videos of you speaking. Okay. You can do this virtually. You could do this, on the real stage. But use some items that kind of feature you and demonstrate that, yes, you are an experienced speaker. This featured section is a really cool new area of LinkedIn. Moving on, the last 3 sections I'll talk about today. Your experience section, make sure that you explain your speaking business. This should probably be linked to, you probably have a company page set up. It's not that gray avatar that's in there. Make sure to set up to a company page. And make sure that you explain a little bit about what your business is all about. What are your speaking topics? And maybe even including a call to action in that experience section. Okay. Moving on, the last 2 sections before we move on to the second segment of the webinar here today, I want to talk about your skills and your recommendations. Your skills, LinkedIn gives you the opportunity to add up to 50 skills to your profile. Now, what's the most important here, though, guys, is what are those top 3? Because those are the 3 that most people will see. They're not going to click on see more. So are those top 3 intentional, and are they related to your speaking business? You can and you should move those skills around to make sure that the top 3 are the top 3 that you want to use. And having said that, they give you spaces for 50. I would use all 50 skills, use the spaces rather for all 50 skills on your profile. And if you're struggling to come up with 50, do what I do. You ready for this? This is what I do. I literally go on my competitors' profiles on LinkedIn and I look at their skills. And guess what? I get inspiration from those skills and I add some of those same skills to my profile. Okay, so think about using that technique. Finally, recommendations. As a speaker, you have to have recommendations on your profile. Recommendations from past clients. This whole concept of social proof is so important nowadays. If you can get a client who is jumping up and down, loved your last speaking engagement, to give you a LinkedIn recommendation, that is worth its weight in gold. I will use these recommendations in my marketing materials, in my speaker demo video clips. I'll put them like kind of coming up on screen. I might put them in my email. And it's some great visibility because when they give you a recommendation, you also gain real estate on their profile. So think about giving and receiving at least 1 recommendation related to your speaking business in the year 2020, and focus on being really strategic about who you give those to. Now, I may, for example, know that Christopher Johnson is a wonderful speaker. I've seen him speaking at an event. I know he's affiliated with the TEDx Detroit organization. I might give him a LinkedIn recommendation. When he accepts it, I gain real estate on his profile. And there's a lot of people within that TEDx Detroit community that are going to see my name, and some of them will click to come on over to my profile. Okay, so think about that strategically. Who could you give a recommendation to that could expand your visibility within your LinkedIn network? All right, so moving along here, I want to go on to your business page. I talked about this a little bit. Make sure that you do have a company page set up on LinkedIn. When you do, that company page will show in that top header bar. I've kind of put it in a red box here to pull it out to your attention. If you have a gray avatar in there, gray is not okay. That either means you don't have a company page or it's not properly linked. And from your audience's perspective, it makes it look like you're not an established speaker, you're just getting started, or you're working out of your basement. None of those things may be true, or maybe they're all true, but let's not position ourselves that way. Set up a company page. It's free to do so. I've got a link in here if you want to follow those instructions through step by step. All right, so now I want to kind of move off from profile optimization for speakers, and I want to move into a discussion about some common mistakes I see people making on LinkedIn. And here's a couple of things, and I want you to kind of be truthful with yourself as you're thinking about these questions. Does your LinkedIn look like a resume? And if it does, keep in mind what I said earlier. Your profile should be written to attract your ideal target audience. If you're a job seeker, you're trying to get a job, that might make sense to write it more like a resume. But as a professional speaker, you want your profile to look like a speaker profile. Okay, so keep that in mind. Here's another mistake. Difficult to find your contact info and website. If I want to book you as a speaker, think about, you should include that contact info, that call to action multiple times, multiple places on your profile. Certainly I want to put it in my contact info, but let's say someone doesn't know that contact info exists, or they're on mobile, right? And on mobile, on the LinkedIn app, it's all the way at the bottom of the profile, and I might not be able to find it. So I would include your contact info in your about section. I would include it in your experience section, and I would also include it in your contact info, that box that says contact info. So make sure it is easy to find, not difficult to find, your contact info and your website as well. Another common mistake I see speakers making is they just don't have a well-established network, less than 500 connections. I don't know what it is, guys, but once you get to that 500 plus, it kind of is like the little seal of approval that you are a widely established and well-connected person, right? So if you don't have 500 connections yet, that's your goal, is to work on building your network on LinkedIn. Here's what I do. I have like a box of business cards. I will go through all of those business cards and invite those people to connect. I don't know where they are now and what businesses they're working at. They may have changed some of them, right? But you never know where some of those connections can lead. And even if they're not a good referral for me for speaking business, it's going to get me over that 500 connection mark. Okay. Moving along, no recommendations from past clients. Oh, when I look at speakers' profiles, I'm like, you say you're an experienced speaker. There's got to be at least one person who can give you a LinkedIn recommendation. And here's a little bonus tip. If you're just getting started as a speaker, often you're not going to be paid, right? And you might take a lot of those non-paid because of the visibility and the exposure, right? Here's what you want to do is you want to ask at the time that they book you and they say, no, no, John Murray, we don't have a budget for you. You want to say, understood, be happy to speak for your group, but in exchange, I'd like to ask you to give me a LinkedIn recommendation afterwards. Would that be okay? And they're going to say, absolutely, we're not paying you. So that's kind of like our payment, right? So that's the time that you ask for that recommendation before the speaking engagement. The same thing on the flip side of it for a paid speaking engagement. Afterwards, I'm going to reach out to my client, say, how did you think it went? Anything else I can do to help with follow up, etc. And if they're jumping up and down saying, wow, Brenda, this was the best presentation ever. Our team got so much out of it. I can't say enough about your approach and your enthusiasm. I'm going to say, wow, Julie, that's great to hear. Could you give me a LinkedIn recommendation? That's the time I ask for it, when they're jumping up and down and so excited about me as a speaker. Even if they paid me, I'm still going to ask them for a LinkedIn recommendation. Okay. Here's another common mistake. When you send out invitations, do you include a personal note? And really important here, guys, to send invitations and include a personal note. And the reason to do so, I'm actually going to practice a technique right now and just to show you how I'm doing this. The reason we want to include a personal note with our invitations is it creates some context, and it also helps people to understand who we are and why we want to connect with them. So if you are a speaker and you are trying to build your network on LinkedIn, when you send an invitation, I want you to do this technique. So when I'm visiting Jean's profile right here, I click on connect and it says you can either add a note to personalize it or you can send. I'm going to click on add a note. Here's the formula I like to follow. Hi, first name, and I'm literally typing this in right now. Hi, Jean. If we've met, I'm going to remind this person, Jean, where we've met. If not, I'm going to say we haven't met yet, but, and then I'm going to look at their profile and reference one or two items that are interesting to me, or one or two items that we have in common. It might be, hi, Jean, we haven't met yet, but I see that we're both experienced speakers and we share several common connections, including Christopher Johnson. Okay, so a couple things that I've mentioned. Let's connect on LinkedIn, Brenda Meller. In this case, I'm going to say, hi, Jean, and I'll say, nice to, quote unquote, see you at the, typing this in, at the LinkedIn for Speakers webinar today. And then I'm going to ask for the invitation. This is the only thing you ask for in an invitation. Let's connect on LinkedIn, Brenda Meller. And I sign off with my name. This is the approach I use with every single invitation I send. I personalize every single invitation. It's so important to do this because this offers context. So when people are looking at those invitations, they can decide whether or not they want to accept it. And if you use this approach by making this invitation all about them, not about you, you would have a higher likelihood that they're going to accept the invitation. And then after they accept it, You've built in a little bit of trust and permission to message them. This is really key. At the second step in this process, after Jean accepts my invitation, I'm going to message her back and I'm going to say, thanks for accepting my invitation. I'm an experienced virtual presenter specializing in LinkedIn strategy. Let me know if you'd like to learn more or something at that point, right? So that's an opportunity. That's when I do a little bit of a soft pitch and then see where the dialogue goes from there. So including a personal invitation is so, so important, guys. If you're not doing it yet, you want to do it with every invitation you send from this point forward. So these are just a few common mistakes I see speakers making on the platform. Maybe you're making one or two already, but maybe you'll get those corrected after watching this webinar here today. All right, we're going to move into the final tip here, and then we'll open this up to Q&A. And these are just some simple techniques to help you amplify your reach as a speaker. Such an important thing that you have a strong brand presence through LinkedIn. And this is my very first tip. And I want to give you a little bit of a backstory thing on here. So let's say, you want to get people taking pictures of you and sharing them on social media. And you have to remind them, and you have to remind them maybe once or twice more, okay? It's kind of like when I go over, and when I was little, and when I would go over a friend's house in the summer, and the mom would say, Brenda, would you like a bottle of water? And I would say, no, I'm okay. And it was like 90 degrees out and I was super hot, but I didn't want to like put the person out. I'm like, no, that's okay. And then I'd be sitting around for a while and the mom would be drinking the water. My friend would be drinking the water. And then she would say, are you sure you don't want a bottle of water, Brenda? It's really hot outside today. And then I would say probably the second or the third time she asked me, actually, if it wouldn't be too much trouble, sure, I'll have a glass of water, right? It's the same thing with your audience. If you say one time in the beginning of your presentation, take a photo of me and share it on social media, they're going to be like, oh, I don't know, I'm feeling a little bit awkward about that. But if I tell you, and then I tell you again later, hey, reminder, feel free to take photos of me, share it on social media and tag me. You might feel more open to actually doing that. And here's what I would do, guys. As you're watching the presentation today, probably got your phone right in front of you, right? Pull up your phone, turn it sideways, and then take a picture of something that I'm sharing here today, and then share that photo out on social media and talk about the fact that you attended this LinkedIn for Speakers webinar. Maybe share one thing that you learned here today and tag me in the photo. When you tag me in that post, I will comment back. I'll encourage people to visit your profile, and then I'll ask you, hey, Julie, what speaking topics are you speaking about right now? So I'm going to help to kind of warm it up the audience a little bit for you. And this is going to help you to get more visibility as a speaker. So again, the technique here is to encourage your audience to take pictures of you and post that on social media, tag you, and share something that you learned. And remind them again. I'm going to tell you guys again, feel free to take a picture. Totally fine to do so. All right, moving along, my second technique to help you amplify your reach is this. As soon as I get booked for a speaking engagement, I'm going to add it to my website calendar. I might add a Facebook event. I might create a LinkedIn event, and I am going to post about it on social media as well. And I'm going to tag the organization and thank the person who booked me. So for example, the Troy Chamber, I'm speaking at their nonprofit conference next week. Now, when they booked me, I put out a social media post and I said, so excited to announce that I've been chosen on the speaker lineup for the upcoming Troy Chamber virtual conference. Thank you at Jody House for booking me. Looking forward to sharing my insights with the at Troy Chamber community. Okay. I'm tagging the person who booked me. I'm tagging the organization, and I'm increasing my visibility while also promoting that upcoming speaking engagement. This is a great technique to amplify your reach even before that event has occurred. And little bonus technique, from time to time, what I will do is I'll actually create a little collage photo of all the other speakers, and I'll post that on social media, and I will tag all of the other speakers as well. And I start to build in this social media karma with all of the other speakers as well. That way, when I show up at the event, Christopher and Julie are like, Brenda, thanks so much for helping to promote us. So I'm giving a little bit of love there too. So again, the technique here is to promote the events as soon as you're booked. And obviously, guys, here I'm talking about the events that are open to the public, the corporate things that are closed. You probably wouldn't want to share those on social media, right? All right. So let's move on now to my third and final tip, and then we'll move into Q&A. And this third tip is to request a recommendation from the person or organization who booked you. And again, I talked about this a little bit earlier. These recommendations they're going to sit on your profile. It's nice social proof and really great use for marketing and advertising use for speaking engagements for you in the future. Remember, like attracts like. So when you get that recommendation from somebody who's booked you for a speaker, it's kind of the same equivalent of that stamp of approval, right? It's somebody who does this for a living, who books speakers, who is scheduling conferences and events, and they've kind of given you that stamp of approval. Yes, Christopher Johnson is an exceptional speaker. You should book him, right? So think about this, requesting that recommendation from that person or organization who booked you, especially when it comes up in conversation and they're like, wow, Brenda, this was amazing. That's the time you want to strike when the iron's hot and ask them about that, that recommendation. All right, guys, as we summarize here today, this is a Power 30 webinar, and I don't like coming into webinars where I feel like the whole thing is a sales pitch, but I got to give you a little bit of overview information about my business. So in the last couple minutes here, just to remind you, I do have a series of these Power 30 webinars. These are all free, and you can go on my website, learn more about them. I have a Winning at Zoom session, a LinkedIn 101, 6 tips on using LinkedIn for business development and setting your prices as an independent consultant, in addition to today's LinkedIn for speakers. So you can go to my website, learn a little bit more about that. I'll have the link in the email that I send you guys if you want to check that out later. And if you do need additional help, this is as much as I'll sell to you guys here today. If you do need additional help, I do work with individuals in a one-on-one basis. I have 2-hour individual virtual coaching sessions, or you can do a 30-minute session with me. In addition, if you're looking for free tips, follow my Meller Marketing Company page on LinkedIn and subscribe to my YouTube channel where you can learn a little bit more. All right, so that's all I have for you today. It's about 1:26 according to my clock. And I want to just see, do you guys have any questions? So before you leave here today, I'd like to just give you guys a moment and see if you have any questions, anything that we've covered here today on the webinar, and see if I can help you out. And if not, we may give you a few minutes back to your day. But if you do have any questions, if you could please use chat. I'm going to keep everybody muted until the end of the session here today. If you don't have any questions, totally love the fact that you spent some time with me here today. If you could, please just leave one comment in chat before you leave here today. Let me know if you felt that the session was helpful, and maybe one tip that you're going to apply as a speaker. So again, in chat, if you could just let me know one thing that you learned that was helpful, or one thing that you're going to implement after watching the webinar today. All right. Jean says, just wondering, I have a friend that wants to start doing webinars and charge a fee. How do you decide on the amount of the charge for attending the webinar? Suggestions are appreciated. Great question, Jean. And I'm actually working through this process myself now. What you could do is do a little bit of a scan of the market. An easy way to do that is go on Eventbrite and see what are other speakers charging for the event, and then look at both the duration and then what are the elements, what do you get with that event, okay? So a 30-minute webinar might be a little less expensive than a 1-hour webinar where you get a workbook or a downloadable checklist or something like that. And see what is the market value, what are people paying for these? You might want to think about even doing what I'm doing right now, do a 30-minute segment for free, use this as a lead generation source for you, and then the back end is where you make your money on the individual coaching or the other client engagements there. All right, so good question, Jean. And you may just want to, launch it as a beta test and start it as a low price point and see how many people you get coming into the session. Over time, you might raise that price point and kind of move from a beta test version up to the full scale version of that webinar. All right, guys. Thank you so much for joining here today. This has been Brenda Meller with Meller Marketing. I am an experienced speaker, and I love the power of LinkedIn to help to bring visibility to all of you, and looking forward to seeing you on the platform. Have a wonderful afternoon. Stay safe and stay healthy, and we will see you guys around. Take care, everyone. Thank you.